Good morning.
Call this meeting to order. We need to approve the agenda as printed. So second, motion's been made and second to approve the agenda as printed. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That is carried. Public comment on agenda items. Gentlemen, anything to say? No, okay. Communication shared by solid waste board members. Any of that? Hearing none. Approval of minutes, August 16th, open and closed section. Move approval. Second. Motion made to approve and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That is carried. Well,
That was quick.
it's long. Yeah, let's not slow the train down.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. So, we both, and I have been working to look at some other options for the board and the county to consider for the beneficial use of our landfill gas. Right now, we're continuing to operate, selling the power to WPS, month to month power purchase agreement, so the rates are kind of bumping around a little bit. I guess Brett Arnold from Vespine Energy came to us a while back and talked about the idea of maybe looking at some different options. Not selling power to the grid, but using it internally on site in a data center format. So this is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of been brewing for a little while. We've got a proposal from Vespine. We've also got Adam Wright on Zoom here from California. Anyways, they've done some work with both. They have a project on in Wisconsin, Marathon County landfill that Brett gave Chris and I a tour of a couple months ago, and we thought it'd be a good time to just let them talk about what this option potentially could be, and try to get some feedback from the board, and then based on the discussions, then decide, if we want to proceed with a follow-up meeting and talk a little bit more in detail of things. But yes, at this point, I'll turn it over to Brett and Chris. I think Brett's gonna go first.
Yeah.
And
Sounds
then, then Chris has got.
Great.
And I informed Brett a little bit about each one of the board members, so at least he has a feel for.
Well, I'd like to hear what that was about.
They're sectioned out.
Half of that stuff ain't true.
Okay, well, hello again, I'm Chris with both, and Brett's here with Vespine, and we put a little agenda together here together. First, Brett's gonna talk about Vespine Energy, and then I'm gonna talk about kind of our review and ongoing review of the proposal. And so with that, I will let Brett talk about Vespine.
Great. And Adam is on Zoom as well. Thanks for joining us, Adam. He's our CEO and co-founder out in California. So thanks. I don't know if you can hear us well, Adam, but thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no worries. I'll let you take the mic, Brett. If you need any support, let me know.
Yeah, pretty well in this room.
So, like Chris said, my name is Brett. I actually grew up in Kaukauna and went to Madison, and I live back in Green Bay now. So being local to Wisconsin and, being here in front of you guys is fairly appreciated. It's cool to see this solution being talked about at a local site here in Wisconsin. So I'm excited to kind of run through what Vespine is. We can open up the questions at the end, myself and Adam can kind of answer, but in a nutshell, the solution that we offer, we really focus on finding small, low flow, remote sites that just don't have a good beneficial use case for landfill gas. And within that conglomerate, there's a large focus for our organization on closed landfills that have had a power project going for a long time, that now they're kind of on the tail end of the gas curve, you know, the PPA they're receiving or is expiring or the rates aren't economic for the project to continue. So our project works really well with these opportunities, and that falls right into kind of the site that you guys, the project and the opportunity here at Winnebago. So, like I said, you guys, you've already have a high investment in this natural gas energy project, and we want to help continue a beneficial use case for landfill gas versus having to revert back to and do something like that. The next slide. So this just kind of shows opportunities throughout the country in these kind of low flow remote sites or sites like yourself that are looking for a solution right now that we're in communication with and trying to offer a solution to the problem. So just kind of a visual to see that there's a lot of sites out there that have a similar issue.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How did you identify those sites? What process do you go through to identify it?
Yeah, so this visualization here is basically sites that are over 100 SCFM, and we use the EPA, which is like a public database.
Okay.
To identify sites across the country.
So
EPA has.
We have data that's at the EPA that has that information.
We do.
Okay.
It's interesting that it's a database that the EPA formulated called the LMOD, the Landfill Methane Outreach Program Database, and it has all sorts of information like, is there an active project? What kind of, waste is in place? And I don't know, John, this is something that came to you, had to relay to the EPA, but it's a great database to look at and say, where is the opportunity for energy projects like a company like ourselves? They even actually sort it out where they say, this site isn't, let's say, a candidate for a project. This site already has an operational project. So it's a really, really unique database to have. Okay. Good question. So in a nutshell, this is what our solution is. We call it a self-sustaining microgrid. And right now from A, B to C, you guys are already doing, there's a lot of landfills across the country that have active energy projects producing electricity. And then from C, you guys are exporting those electrons to the grid. And that's where the issue's coming in, where utility rates are just not super economic. As John said, you're on a month-to-month rate, so it's just hard to make this project continue to work with what you're getting from the utility. So what we'd like to do, as John said, is bring in a data center or bring in that end user of the electricity to the site. So that way you don't have to go through the utility, sell the electricity, and then the utility has to sell the electricity to this end user. We just bring them right to the site in the form of a data center. And these data centers house computing, and computing is, in warehouses all over the world currently. I mean, you look like your phone when you store a photo in the cloud, it's really just sitting on a computer, a server that's running off of grid power. And there's a lot of incentive to take that computing power, modularize it into small data centers, small shipping containers. You can see in the lower right, these data centers are really just refurbished shipping containers that house computing power. And we can modularize that and stick it at very remote sites. These computers are site agnostic. They just need an energy source and internet. And the computing is at such a low bandwidth that it really doesn't need like fiber optics or like a really great signal. We just need a littlest bit of satellite internet wherever we can find it, and the computers can run constantly off of landfill gas inside a shipping container at your landfill. So that's what we're kind of looking to do, is bring that data center, that end user, here to the site. That's good. And then once we've done that, once we've kind of continued the economics of this project, we have the data center here, formulating a new stream of revenue in a long period of time via the contract. We can kind of look at, hey, what's the other opportunities we can use those electrons for here locally, maybe within the community. I know you guys have. Took a little walk around and looked over when we were looking at the energy project, the park that you guys have located on the landfill, the Kennewill Park. It'd be cool to say, hey, is there any way we can shave off some electrons and have like a local EV charging station there for the community to utilize, or maybe even some local corporations that are looking to get into some sort of EV vehicles. We use that as like a test site. So there's kind of cool things that this can involve. Not to say this is something we have to commit to right away, but it's cool to, because how this works is that the data center is eating all the electrons and using them as a revenue stream. The car pulls up to the EV charging station, car charges, the data center just scales down to allow the vehicle to charge, and when the car drives away, the data center scales back up. So it's a really nice match with EV charging, and it'd be really cool to be able to offer that to the community and local corporations. It's like, so it's kind of a cherry on top kind of thing that we can discuss long term. And then, next slide. Boom, boom, boom. Get away with this. And then, so then, you know, we also, as you guys have kind of discussed, I think there's the E-RIN program that was not included in the RS ruling in June. We still believe very strongly that it's gonna be something coming down the road eventually, potentially along with other biogas to electricity opportunities for us to create more revenue off this project. So by keeping this site electrified with the data center, we are able to help manage your accessibility to E-RINs and what other programs are out there, whenever they do come online. And we were able to find a lot of success doing this with these. We have contracts in place already to get access to the E-RINs because we kind of aggregate all of our sites together. You know, if these small sites go to these programs and try and negotiate contracts individually, small sites doing that aren't going to get great rates. They're not even able to see at the table. We kind of conglomerate aggregate all of our sites together and then have the contract negotiations at a bigger level. So then you guys can have access to better rates through the year program, whatever. So that's kind of what we're doing, and we can manage all that for your team. Next slide, please. And then here is our active project at Marathon County that John, Chris, and myself went a little tour of. And the left side is the data center, and as you can see, it's just a standard 40-foot shipping container that's kind of been refurbed into a home for computing. And the right image, that big building was already there when we came into play. The generators are actually just north of the data center on the lower side of that picture. So you can kind of see in the lower left of the right picture, there's some utility vehicles or kind of pickup trucks that give you a good idea of the size of this data center. So the footprint is relatively small. And I can't even send a text at this site, but we have satellite positioned perfectly where we can easily operate the bandwidth of this computing. And then we kind of took an aerial view of your site, your energy project, and put some images in that we believe would be a good opportunity or a good place for this project to go. This is not saying like, hey, here's where it needs to go. It's more for you just to see the size of the project. The Marathon County example is about a 2-megawatt facility. They're a little bit bigger landfill with a little bit higher flows and still open, so they're kind of on the increasing gas curve. You guys here, we probably size for about a 1 megawatt shipping container or facility. So that's why, you know, either that size or even a little bit smaller. So the footprint of this project will be extremely minimal.
Is that where our flare is at? Is that what am I looking at?
Nice, yeah.
You're looking down at engines 2R and 3. So those green boxes are 2 of the engines. One's a dead shipping container, that engine died. And then the flare is that part to the north of the blue.
Okay, so that's right down the road.
This is at Snell Road. This is over at Snell Road.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yep. So it's nice to be able to locate. I mean, we would just drop a data center right in at the Snell Road energy project and not really hinder any sort of operations. It just kind of sits there in one. We operate remotely, so you don't need somebody on site constantly running in and out of your area. It's also going to operate remotely. So that's kind of what I have for my section. I can kick back to Chris to run through your slides.
Sure. So let's just reset on where you guys are at. What's the existing conditions? Because I know, you've been looking at landfill gas energy utilization options here. So you have engines 2R, 3, and 4. We're assuming you'll be able to generate 10 million kilowatt hours per year. But you do need a new compressor treatment system right now because the one you have is oversized and is at its end of its life. You will need a new engine generator within the next 2 years, probably what we call engine 3R, because engine 3 is towards the end of its life. Right now, your electricity is being sent to Wisconsin Public Service, the grid, and the environmental attributes like E-RINs or RECs for your system are currently not being utilized because of the way you've got your contract, which is this slide, which right now your monthly variable rates you do have on and off peak rates. You're currently averaging 6.5 cents, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less per month a month. You're not getting any of that REC revenue. You have 2 grid connections. One at the Snow Road and one at the Law Enforcement Center, where engine 4 is. If you want to continue down this contract with Wisconsin Public Service, the county will be the sole investor in the landfill gas energy system, including the new equipment that you need. And the engine 3R, potentially, if that's where you want to go. Because you don't have a long-term contract, you have a high risk that the revenues could suddenly be less than your expenses. So, John and the staff and then how do we deal with that, right? How do we deal with that? So Vespine's come in with this proposal and they're offering a 10-year contract. This has a base power purchase agreement on the microgrid of 5.5 cents per kilowatt hour plus 15% royalties. They, like Brett said, would manage the REC, ERIN, or the environmental attributes and share revenue. So you wouldn't have to deal with that. They would have a microgrid on site. You wouldn't be connected to the utility grid. They're offering up to $1.5 million to support Winnebago County and your landfill gas energy system need, like I said, the compressor upgrade that we talked about. They're also willing to invest in the future engine 3R when the time comes. There is a risk, that Vespine will not succeed. And then what would you guys be doing? Well, Wisconsin Public Service may say, hey, we're not gonna be taking your power anymore. But the way I look at it, that may be kind of the situation you're at right now. If you have to just turn it off and suddenly if things turn around and get better, you still face an issue of coming back online. So let's talk about what those expenses are. And I think there's another agenda item that we'll be talking about shortly. We have capital investments and we have proposals in that basically your new landfill gas treatment system is going to cost about $1 million. The new landfill gas or flare system is going to cost, $400,000 when all said and done. Put a new engine in, it's $1 million. So we talked about relocating engine 4, and in this case with Vespine, it would be critical because we want to have the microgrid in one location. So you're also looking at your O&M costs of $500,000 per year to keep everything running. And you have depreciation, which is variable depending on the year, depending on what you got going out there, but it's the same right now. What you're depreciating is going to be the same no matter what decision you make. So it's kind of I just kept that out of there. So if we look at like a 5-year, next slide, 5-year financial analysis, you comparing the two revenue rates, you can see what it lists there. You have annual expenses. And here I've put it into a rate of the dollars per kilowatt hour. So if you put your capital expenditures, which was added up to about $2.5 million, and you look at 5 years, you want to recover that, you need to, it's about 5 cents per kilowatt hour. And your O&M is about 5 cents per kilowatt hour. So really you need about 10 cents per kilowatt hour just to break even in the next 5 years. So the comparison down below shows that the rate you're at now, or at least this past few months, you're going to be negative. If you go with Vespine, because they are willing to invest the money, the capital rate goes to 0. You still have an O&M cost, and you're in positive. It's not a lot of money, and we don't know what those royalties are going to be for sure, but at least you have everything covered. Next slide. So the considerations, it's pretty obvious that this is a pretty good deal, right? They're investing in the system, and when they do that, they have an interest in its success just like you do. You would continue to operate and maintain the engines and equipment, just like, you are now. Clint will continue to work for the county. Vespine would operate and maintain the data center and all that related equipment, so you wouldn't have to worry about that. I think it's really nice that, E-RINs are not, something in place right now. Vespine will take care of all that and share in the benefits, so you don't have to, like, down the road and suddenly have to deal with it. Now, like I said before, Wisconsin Public Service may not allow reconnecting to the grid after you disconnect. And or the power sales market may improve in the future, and you may have signed a contract that isn't as lucrative, but those are some of the risks. And these are some other ones that we're talking about. We're gonna have to sign a contract of some sort in order to make this all happen. What if Vespine fails and walks away from the project? We've had that discussion. The county, and we could put this into the contract, the county would retain the equipment. Again, the grid connection is a risk. The landfill gas generation drops below useful flows in less than 10 years. We would try and structure the investment reimbursement for the equipment over a time frame less than that. So how we were talking about doing this is, Winnebago County would still purchase all of this equipment that's necessary to keep the system operating. And then Vespine over time would reimburse the county for it and an agreed to schedule. No, just go back. Now, if this site stops being lucrative, you know, Vespine could take the data center offsite and use it someplace else. And the other thing is, it's like, what happens if the engines fail? Well, we would evaluate reinvestment or repair at that time. So I guess those are some potential risk contingencies. And you can go to the next slide. So the recommendations is continue selling power to Wisconsin for public service right now. Negotiate a contract with Vespine. Request that we get a more detailed layout and installation plan for the equipment and a schedule for installation and when the switch would be made. And then we continue to monitor with Vespine the environmental attributes and how they apply to your site. I think that's it.
And I guess one more thing to say before we go into questions is, you know, we've kind of been treading water per se in 2023. We were waiting for the EPA to announce the rules of RFS. And unfortunately, the E-RINs were left out of the equation this time. You know, really locking into some sort of contract where we can put pen to paper and come up with a return on investment that makes sense would allow us to, well, right now, Clint Meyer has been managing our system all by himself for the last year and a half. We need to hire someone, but there's some concern about hiring another employee if, you know, 6 months from now, we're gonna just flare things. We're not gonna do gas energy anymore. Because if that's the case, we don't need to hire a second person, but we're gonna continue to run, operate, maintain engines. We need another person. And I would really like to have some sort of contract in place before we pull the trigger and do something like that, so. Anyways.
If you just go back to that last slide, I wanna get a. I just need to kind of think about this.
Nice.
Take a picture. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
So I've got a couple questions. So what is the 15% royalty based on? Just the energy we produce here?
Yeah, and Adam, if you wanna jump in on any of this as well, feel free. But yes, it's all based on the top end revenue of the project. here, correct? I mean, not exposure to anything else.
I can comment on that actually a little bit more. So yeah, when we so we're essentially once we take ownership of that electricity that's generated at the site, then we put it into our data center, and that data center is going to be producing somewhere on the order of, if you put it into dollars and cents per kilowatt hour, it's going to be producing somewhere between 10 and 15 cents per kilowatt hour. So if you do that 15% on that, that'll get you an additional, somewhere between 1.5 and 2 cents per kilowatt hour as a baseline, right? So that's sort of the data center revenue, and that would bring your total cost or your total reimbursement. So we're paying the base rate of 5.5 cents, so that brings your net rate up to between 7 and 7.5 cents. And then on top of that, we can also monetize the environmental attributes, which are separate from the base load of or the base rate, let's say, of data processing. And that would add, depending on when eRINs comes into play and what the RIN price is at that point, that would then bring in an additional, say, 2 to 3 cents per kilowatt hour as a royalty. So that would bring your total up to let's say 9 to 10 cents. So the royalty is it's a variable number based on our top line revenue, which includes the revenue we make from data processing, as well as any environmental attributes that we're able to create from the site. There is going to be some variability in that, but by having it locked into a percentage, we're incentivized as a developer to maximize the value to our investors. And so by sort of having you folks share as a percentage, you're essentially sort of an equity holder in the project, and so everybody's aligned to try to maximize value, if that makes sense. Brett, feel free to add anything there.
No, that's great. Thanks, Adam.
So that kind of leads into my other question. So you would, based on this agreement, you would get the eRINs if they become a thing, and then we would get 15% of whatever that number is.
The way that it's currently proposed is that the project would receive like all revenues associated, and then we would split the revenues as with that percentage split, and that revenue would include both data processing and environmental attributes.
Okay, great, thank you.
One other thing I just want to clarify.
Okay.
eRINs will not be given to the county. The eRINs will be are distributed to the electric vehicle manufacturers, and then the generators like yourself would have to negotiate with them to get a percentage of whatever that eRIN is.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And then you talked a little bit about it in the presentation about what happens if the market goes way up, and instead of 6.5 cents, WPS wants to pay 20 cents. Will Vespine be able to resell what we're offering now? Will they be able to resell that on the market? And I mean, why not? If you're going to make 14 cents up, is that a possibility for them? I would assume.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in there. I mean, we're a energy developer, right? So we're always looking for the highest and best use case for those electrons. And so if it so happens that the grid is paying more than we can make if we're running, data processing, then we would absolutely pivot into that and create more energy or create more revenue for the project. I don't think, the earlier in the presentation, it said that we wouldn't be connected to WPS. I think we would still have that connection there. We would still have the physical connection. All the physical infrastructure is there. So we wouldn't have to, kind of do all of that, put in all of that infrastructure again, we could sort of fairly easily, if there's suddenly a big demand for landfill gas to electricity, we could pretty easily pivot into selling into the grid. There's also other opportunities that we're able to take advantage of. One of those is kind of like, you may be familiar with demand response programs, and what we can do, there are times of day, or like let's say there's a big electricity demand, there's a big heat wave or something, we can elect to sell electricity into the grid for just those times that the power or the price of those electrons are higher. And so we can sort of be strategic about, we're running data centers for most of the time, because when there's not a big demand for electricity, then the price for electricity is quite low. But during those critical times where we want to, we can inject some or all of the electrons that we're producing into the grid and make a hedge or a spread that way. So yes, I think as a short answer, we would maintain the ability to sell into the grid if the economics allow.
Okay, thank you. I guess my other question, liability for the equipment or the data being stored. Do we own any of that if there's a lightning strike or a flood, or I don't know?
All the liability for our site is completely on Vespine. The site would be fully insured. There'd be, builder's risk insurance. There'd be, liability insurance, and all of that would be kind of spelled out in the contract. But yeah, no, there would not be any liability there.
The last question I have, and then I'm going to be quiet. How many? I saw the dots on the map of where you could go.
Yeah.
Other than Marathon County, how many sites are you working with, and how long have you been at Marathon now?
Yeah, we've been at Marathon since, I believe was it June, Brett? I forget.
June we turned on. Yep.
Yeah, it was June of this year we were at Marathon. Other than that, I mean, we're working with, so we other than Marathon, we have 3 additional sites that are under construction, all of which are in California. So the company is based in California, in the Bay Area. That's where I am right now. And then, Brett, our head of business development, being in Wisconsin, that gives us a really nice conduit into Wisconsin. So right now we're kind of focusing on California and Wisconsin. We have, again, I mentioned 3 sites under construction in California. One of which is also a municipal site. We're not quite able to share the actual names of the locations yet, and we'll be releasing that information in the coming months. But and then in addition to let's say the under construction sites, we have I would say, and Brett, maybe you're the better one for this, but how many sites do we have kind of letters of intent with and are sort of negotiating with at this point?
Yeah, there's around 20 to 25 other sites that are kind of in either early phases of discussion or contract negotiations with, and those are all throughout the Midwest. Iowa is an interesting state with a lot of kind of small landfills. Minnesota, Wisconsin, as CC mentioned, California, but then even out on the East Coast, South Dakota, so we're kind of all over the place. Yeah.
I'm going to show how stupid I am and don't totally understand this, but is the data center something similar to like a battery, and you're charging the battery and you can use that?
Good. Yeah, good. No, that's okay. So like this computing is actually a purchaser of electrons, and they're a running operation. Any sort of computing power. There's just the demand for data in our kind of world is just going up and to the right for a lot of reasons. And these purchasers of the electrons are using the computing to run formulas or whatever it may be to produce something on their end, but they need to purchase power to do so. So it's not really like a battery, these computers need power that they're purchasing from currently the grid. Why not purchase power from us here off the landfill, to run this computing in a renewable fashion? So it's not really the battery, it's more using electrons to do computing.
In the night, the cool thing is that you're producing variable amounts of electricity because there's a bunch of computers that can turn on and off. They can manage how much electricity is being produced by turning computers on and off.
So I understand that, so it's not a data center per se, I've heard it called a data center, but it's really not a data center then.
Yeah, I mean, server farm, data center, we kind of call it a data center. It's basically a shipping container full of computing power. So we kind of, we call it a self-sustaining microgrid, we call it a data center, kind of different words to describe.
But the data itself is not there, the data, somebody's purchasing so they can have data here.
Correct.
Right? Okay,
Correct,
so it's not there's no data, this isn't the cloud.
These
The
computers,
cloud is here, this is power for the cloud.
you got it. So computers shut down, let's say we're doing operations on generators, all of them shut down. Doesn't mean that is all lost, right? That's all kind of, to your point, means that information, that rendering is all being stored elsewhere. It's not yet data center, no storage of data is happening here. Yeah, great, it's all like external.
It's not like a big flash drive.
Yeah, exactly. Not a big, yeah, exactly. All that information is being computed and run and stored via satellite. Yeah.
Are we able to form some sort of a cooperative between public service and yourselves? Or you want a specific limit just to yourselves? I like to always work on backups.
Yeah, Adam, maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
When you say cooperative, do you mean you would sort of sell some of the power back to WPS and then sell some of the power here to locally to us? Is that what you mean?
Maybe to maintain that relationship with, with the utility. As they have not been good partners with us for quite some time and whatever, so I would think they would play hardball with us on a weekend and whatever, so I guess it was a question just to see if you had any, I guess, interest in pursuing something like that, if in fact that comes to that and whatever. So,
yeah, I mean, one thing that we could envision potentially is, we could accept, let's say, a minimum. Let's say we would accept a minimum amount of electricity, and then you could have an arrangement where you sell the excess to WPS. You're still sort of maintaining some type of relationship and having, some type of process happening there. I think your facility, landfill gas is considered a renewable resource. Utilities, according to, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, there was a rule called PURPA, and these facilities are considered qualified facilities. So there is like federal law in place that says that, if you produce electricity from a qualified facility, that the utility, essentially has to buy it from you. So I don't think there would ever be a situation where they would say, no, like, we're not going to buy your electricity. Like they may offer they may put you on a different tariff or a different feed-in rate. But I think that we've already shown that we're at a rate that's not that sustainable. So I think the only reason that we would try to get on a different rate is if, for whatever reason, economics improve and there's newer programs that come online and sort of boost the economics. Maybe in 5 years, everybody is charging vehicles and there's just a bigger demand for electricity on the grid. And so now they're offering a better rate. And at that point in time, they'd be coming to us rather than us trying to go to them. So, I don't foresee it being a big issue. We're working with WPS separately on our site, on the site at Marathon County, and I think we as a developer have developed a a pretty strong working relationship with them. And so, we'd be happy to carry that relationship over here as well. But yeah, I mean, if
Chris,
yeah, go
I
ahead,
was gonna ask, Red, would you be contacting Wisconsin Public Service as part of this contract negotiations with Winnebago County to, at least, talk about the impact, and so it seems like they would be brought in by Vespine as part of this discussion. Now, I don't know what that means, except,
Well, the good thing about it is that what it means is there's a competitor for that electricity. And you'd almost need to bring them to the table, otherwise we can't evaluate whether or not, I mean, we can't read the minds of We Energies, but they certainly are not, we are not an investor in them. They have to pay their stockholders and whatever, so they're gonna do everything they can to be in the best interest of that decision. We have a little different decision process to worry about. I think it's more important to us to make sure we have something a little bit more long-term locked in and not fall off, into the abyss.
And I think what Adam was saying is, hey, and, why do we care if they're gonna offer crappy rates, right? And if something changes where they have an incentive to want to use electricity from renewable source because of politics or whatever laws, they would be coming and saying, hey, we'd like to renegotiate it, so you can purchase your electricity.
Yeah, I think that's a important protection for us and whatever, so I'm just thinking. This is far from going anywhere yet, but it's a start, we got all, and whatever and stuff, so. That ERIN deal, I thought that was the golden cow.
Yeah.
Or whatever,
Very
and
disappointing.
whatever, because there's, obviously it's not working out that way, the government moves too slow. That's all, that's what happens, whatever, so.
Yeah, Mike.
Right,
First of all, just to re-educate maybe me and then other people in here as well. This is specific to Snell, right?
The location would be at Snow.
But where does Sunnyview?
That's where all the gas would be. Sunnyview
All,
gas-
I mean, literally all of it. We don't have, there's nothing else coming from Snell anymore. Right, the
It's all
landfill
being,
itself.
it's all being flared right
Right, that's all being flared, but this is specifically only power being generated at Sunnyview.
now. Sunnyview gas.
Okay, and so in that case, what is how are the term useful flows, quote unquote, right? What are we assuming we've got 10 years of useful flow? Is that why the 10-year contract was sort of structured that way?
Yes.
Chris, maybe you can speak to this, I know you
Yeah.
report on kind of the flows of.
10 years, I think, was what was proposed. When we did the landfill gas utilization project, or where we were looking at the analysis. I think 7 years was kind of one of the timeframes that we knew we would have gas to run a couple of engines.
Sure.
But yeah, 10 years, is there a guarantee that there's gonna be enough gas 10 years from now? No. I can't say there will be, but, for sure. But, we have a plan right now, it's about 500, we know the capacity of the engines. And so, okay, as long as we have this much, we can keep 2 engines running. So it basically goes from 500 to about 350.
Sure, and
By the end of 10 years.
Yeah. And the one thing that we have flexibility with is with these smaller engines, so 2R is a smaller engine, it can operate on 200 CFM of gas. So, that's what the thought is when engine 3 gets to that 60,000 hours, and makes it there, then we'd look to replace it with a smaller unit that would allow more flexibility at lower flows. Plus, it would currently have the newest, technology and, engine management systems that are 25 years old.
And if we're still. Well, high gas, or relatively high gas production, 250 SCFM, we can run an engine. We just scale, let's say we build a data center for a megawatt right now. We just remove computing power and scale the data center down with the flows of the gas. So at 10 years, if we still have enough production to run the small engine, we can just scale the data center down to a smaller, solution and move our computing power somewhere else to operate off other landfill at that point. So we want to stay. I mean, it's a 10-year agreement. I don't know, Adam, if we have kind of 5-year optionality in there, what we built into it, but if we're still producing gas, we definitely want to stay here and continue to make the project economic.
So let me,
Yeah.
but regarding Vespine itself, you guys have been going for concern for how long?
Well,
Same.
the company has been in business for 3 years. We've been in that 3-year time frame. We've been developing partnerships and hiring. We're backed by Silicon Valley venture capital. We're a, you could think of us as a tech company, but we're also a biogas to energy developer. And so right now, as it can take quite some time to sort of develop a landfill gas project. So the early projects that we capitalized earlier in the company are sort of just now coming online. I mentioned, we've got the one in Marathon County, we've got the 3 in California, and then, and now that the company has gained some traction in the industry, we've made some strong partnerships. I think as a developer, we're sort of gaining awareness. We're gaining a name for ourselves in the industry. We're one of the lead sponsors of SWANA, the Solid Waste Association of North America. We put on a couple of different shows every year, but we were at SWANA SOAR in Atlanta. We're going to be at WasteCon in Boston. So we're a pretty active force in the industry right now, and look forward to maintaining that momentum. And thanks for giving us this opportunity to present to you.
So is this concept unique to you? Do you have a patent on this specific concept?
We have internal IP. Nothing that we're using is necessarily patent protected. So there are no other developers to our knowledge that are trying to set up data centers using landfill gas. That may change in the future. There are developers that we're actually partnered with, a number of developers that do a similar concept in oil fields. So as oil and gas operations creates a lot of flared natural gas, and there are companies that are trying to capture those flares in the oil field, turn it into energy, and then use that energy for data centers. One of our partners is a company called Crusoe Energy, and that's one of their specialties, is working in the oil fields. So we've sort of taken a concept and a strategy and applied it to landfill gas, and then developed some internal processes that allow the data centers to operate efficiently, with the correct types of filters and things. Because as landfill can be sort of a dirty-ish place. There can be particulate matter and things like this, and so a lot of our expertise comes in the operational side of things rather than the actual sort of technology development. So all of the technology that we're using is already proven. There's no technological risk to anything that we're doing.
So again, the concept of somebody using remote landfills to create this storage unit, is not proprietary. And so as a board, we have to decide, again, you're a 3-year-old company. We've got to decide if we want to make a 10-year commitment. Obviously, you guys have already stated if we are no longer in business, or if whatever. Last question. The commitment to invest in the capital equipment, as I read that, we pay, you guys reimburse us? Is that how this works?
I guess that was the concept we talked about. Certainly that would be something we'd have to work through our finance department on what makes the most sense for.
But the 10-year amortization, no matter what.
And I would say, that's where I'd say you'd
I
wanna
see.
have a quicker reimbursement of your capital.
Okay,
And I think we can negotiate that, you know, because Vespine was prepared from what I understood, to pay.
We can provide the finances up front. There's no necessity to amortize over any period of time. So we're prepared to inject that capital immediately. And
why would we not want to do that?
Well, you could, I guess, but we can negotiate however you want. But the one concern was, whose equipment is it?
Well, that's my next question.
Right.
I understood it, the county would own it.
Yes.
No, I mean, flat out, that's not even, that's a non-negotiable point.
Yes.
Whoever, at the end of the day, obviously the county owns. That.
yeah, and we can work this out in a contract, but the way that we look at that is what we're buying. Let's say we put in $1.5 million into the project. What we're buying there is the right to use that gas for 10 years. We're essentially buying rights to the gas, if that makes sense.
Perfect.
We're not necessarily buying equipment with that money.
No, I understand. Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
you guys can take that money and do whatever you want with it. But we're essentially, so the way, if we formulate it that way, we don't expect to have any ownership at all into the equipment.
And just, with all the government projects trying to utilize wind power, and are you guys supported or backed by any government programs? I'm kind of wondering, maybe $1.5 million in California ain't much, but I'm kind of wondering how does a 3-year-old company have $1.5 million to throw at equipment and tell us to keep it? So it almost sounds too good. Sounds a little too good to be true. So
Hedge fund.
Well, we see. Yeah, we see value. We see value in biogas, and our goal is to own and operate as many biogas to energy facilities as we can. And so, as a result of that, so we have I would say ample funding coming from California venture capitalists to help to push our mission forward. We do also have government support. We have an active application with the Department of Energy. The Department of Energy has a program called Title 17, which is a loan program for innovative energy projects. And so we would basically be using, so this project is not dependent on government money whatsoever. But for a larger rollout in, let's say, we're very active in Iowa, very active in Minnesota and sort of other states in the upper Midwest. This government money that we're pursuing right now, we've gotten a conditional approval for, would be to support a very large rollout of 50 landfills, kind of across the Midwest, both with most of which don't have gas collection systems. So part of where that funding is going is to install gas collection systems into landfills that don't have them already. So these may be smaller landfills or landfills that are not, some states have much let's say more lax regulations as far as emissions are concerned. And so yeah, I mean, that's sort of, we have, I guess that's more to say that we have access to a lot of pools of capital, but that this particular project would not be dependent on any government money or approvals. We'd be using entirely internal corporate money for this.
Thank you.
Eric, is your company presently profitable, which being so young, I would assume not. But in your long range plans, how long before you anticipate it to be profitable?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that on a project basis, we are profitable. We have, the Marathon County landfill is profitable in the same sense that, we're not in the red. We're making income from it, where our income is surpasses our expenses by a significant margin. And so on a project level, certainly, yes. I think that by the time, we have to build up a certain amount of projects so that the total project income will sort of exceed the corporate expenses. So, I would say, no, we're not quote unquote profitable as an entity at this point in time, but we will be over the next year to 2 years. But in the meantime, we have support from, investors to get to that level of profitability, right? Like, as a company isn't necessarily going to be profitable in the first 2 to 3 years. It's going to take 3, 4, 5 years to get profitable, and so we're on that road to profitability. But from a project perspective, yes.
Thank you.
Any more comments or questions or whatever? It's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. The financials went over pretty quick and I didn't quite catch everything. Definitely want to look at those a little bit closer. But it looked to me like we were making, what, a half a cent? Basically, after you take out the cost, you're making half a cent per kilowatt hour. And we're talking about hiring an additional person with that, I'm assuming, and we're still gonna have to maintain the equipment. That doesn't seem like a lot of money to do that. And I guess I would like to see some more detail as to really whether we think the bottom line over the next 5 years. Right. Is our cash gonna be positive or negative? And
well, I think just to clarify on that particular point, so I think that was Chris doing just a comparison over the various options. I think what wasn't included there is what the actual dollar amount of that revenue share would be. So you would be, I think that half a cent is basically your spread just on the PPA, or just on the electricity, the base rate. So we're paying you a base rate that would essentially meet all of your costs and add a tiny threshold. But then the royalty payment would then add an additional at least 1.5 cents to that equation. So your sort of minimum base case scenario would be 2 cents per kilowatt hour, and then sort of north from there.
yeah, I guess I would need to see more detail as to really, especially if we're gonna consider hiring an additional person, which is more expense to us. And I've got to have some assurance that we're actually going to make money on this project, because if we're doing it I'm not going to have the taxpayers supporting something. We've got to have some aspirations of a positive cash flow out of this whole deal, or we're better off to flare.
I'll say your 2 options right now are do this or flare.
Yeah, and if it's more cost effective to flare, then we flare. That's the way I look at it.
Well, there's a cost to flare.
I understand that, and that has to be looked at as well. You're talking about-
We're just looking at options.
I understand, and this is a wonderful option.
10 million kilowatt hours, times a half this, so, you know, it's $50,000 in the positive, when you add in the 1.5 cents. It's another $150,000, so. With the base rate and the, royalties, you're at in the clear $200,000 per year. And then,
Yeah, no, we
can show you more numbers.
yeah, we definitely need to dig into the financials.
Yeah,
In more
but,
detail.
but if you're looking at making $200,000, which is wonderful. But if we've got to hire 2 people to do that,
We already have one employee.
yeah.
And he's doing all of it, there's not really gonna be anything different.
Yeah.
What's happening is Clint is being overworked.
Well, we
To
have a
maintain-
position for it, so.
Yeah, we have it, it's still in the table of organization, so.
Yeah.
Second mechanic.
Yep, and I appreciate that,
Yeah.
but.
Yep.
I need to see something,
Sure.
a little bit more detail.
It just, the one thing, and I don't disagree with Howard, but I think everybody in Winnebago County that sees that flare burning wonders, what the hell are we wasting that? I could heat my whole house with that and 100 other houses. So even if it broke even, if we were utilizing that gas and somebody was getting some benefit out of it, we're all about recycling and trying to do all of that. So there is some value to at least utilizing that gas, in my opinion. And I know everybody here's gotta be wondering, what the heck, we got a company that's only got 3 years under their belt and only a couple things operating. How do small companies or startup companies ever get going if somebody doesn't take a little chance or gamble on them so that they can get bigger and utilize a whole lot of this gas that is obviously sitting all over the United States that isn't being used? So, not that we don't need more information, but you're right, we got 2 choices, either flare it and let everybody wonder why we're wasting it, or take a gamble on a relatively new company and have the contracts in place.
Yeah. And I think, you know, from Pat's standpoint, the board has always had that mindset when it came to beneficial use of landfill gas. I'd rather do something positive with it, even if it was a break even, rather than just flaring it and kind of wasting it. So I think that's what we're trying to latch on to. We can find an option that will sustain us for 5-10 years, and still allow us to, you know, use the remaining gas that the site produces in a beneficial manner. That's what we'd like to try to move forward with.
Thank you. The presenter's knowledge, does waste management participate in any comparable type program?
So, waste management, meaning the corporate WM, corporate waste management. Yeah, I mean, we are in conversation with waste management on a number of projects, as in addition to all of the other, you know, Republic Services, Waste Connections, all the other major waste, waste management companies. I'm not able to say at this juncture the details of those conversations, but we will have projects up and running with some of them in the very near future.
I would just like to say one thing too. I think this is an opportunity for Winnebago County, because Vespine is in a position right now where they need to validate their concept. And so they're willing to invest in some of these early projects to do that. And if, 5 years from now, the deal, I would guess, is not gonna be as sweet, for Winnebago County. So that, I just wanna say, I think it's an opportunity and. We should.
Agree with that as well, yeah.
Yeah, I'll just put in one last sort of statement there, and I appreciate what everybody is saying as far as Vespine being a young company and having some operational risk. I think that a couple of comments on that. Number one of the things that we can do and I think that we're working on sort of a draft agreement for you guys to look over so that we can start putting some pen to paper and start redlining some things. But one of the things that we can put in there is, like, let's say Vespine goes bankrupt, right? We would say that you guys would own, if that were to happen, you guys would then own any and all equipment that Vespine has installed on the site. So you could either run the data center yourself as a county, or liquidate the assets that we've sort of left on the site. So we can put together some protections for you in the contract to kind of protect against that scenario happening, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is, the $1.5 million that we'd be putting in on the project, that's also completely not, that's sort of not dependent on anything else, right? And so I don't think that if let's say there was a better, let's say WPS was said, hey, like I can now buy your power for 7.5 cents or 8 cents, even 8 cents, right? And so somebody's trying to buy, they're saying, oh, I'm gonna, all of a sudden the markets open up. WPS isn't going to give you $1.5 million to upgrade your engines, right? So and just to reiterate there is no real scenario where you are losing money here, because I think what was not emphasized in the presentation is what that 15% royalty actually means. And as I mentioned earlier, that's going to be a minimum of 1.5 cents base rate, and then when you start including all of the environmental attributes, it could be as much as 5 or even 6 cents. And so when you add that into the equation, there's really no scenario that you're operating in the red. And we'd be happy to kind of put in any kind of protections that you think would be necessary in the contract to kind of make everybody feel comfortable.
Thanks, Adam.
I like that dialogue.
It almost like it's almost like UAW talks.
To follow up a little bit on Howard's comments, I don't know how long it's been now since we've been playing around with gas and engines, but when we first started, we had a huge expense required us by the state and federal government to capture and manage the gas. And I think the board thought at that time that if it could minimize that expense and loss by capturing and utilizing the gas, it would do that. So when this all started, it was never anticipated that we'd make a profit, but we would minimize our losses. And I think we did pretty well at that through the years. I don't know how long we've been, 20+ years. Yeah. We've been probably close to 30 years now. And I think we have probably followed that. If we can't make a profit, we can at least minimize the losses.
Yeah, it's gonna cost you X amount of dollars.
Maintenance of the system is gonna cost
Jerry,
the collection system.
I just want to remind the board, I'm looking at a presentation that I made to you in November of 2022, which was natural gas utilization. And there was a slide on here where we looked at, all the options: flare only, continued gas and energy, engine relocation, engine replacement, RNG, vehicle use, prison, natural gas. The flare only is actually more negative after 6 years than continuing the gas to energy, just because of what you're saying. Because it costs money to keep the flare going, just like anything else, but you're not making any revenue. Whereas the engines, you are, so you're covering some of that. So I guess, I think we answered that previously, we can definitely come back to it if that's what you want to do. But I just wanted to remind everybody.
And that we're required to do at minimum.
Yeah.
So the diagram there regarding the electric charging station, what is that about then? Is that where,
Yeah, kind of just other, it isn't really like have to happen or what we're talking about in this project, but other kind of cool, unique things we can do once we keep this site electrified, and we're, as an organization, interested in doing is how can we help the local community with, let's say, an EV charging station at that park that's located at the Snell Road landfill? Is there cool kind of things that we can do that we want to help support and want to see succeed internally here at the site to help out the community?
yeah, okay, because, I was just at the Wisconsin Counties Association,
Cool.
Conference, and they're a lobbyist group. And so they're talking about EVs and cannabis and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
All kinds of stuff there, and the beating of the drum is, can't do anything about it, it's coming your way, and I get that. And there was very hearty discussion amongst us, Midwesterners talking about what that's gonna look like, gas and electric. So I guess there's just a little bit of pause when it comes to some of that. A little bit, because it's like the question of how, are there subsidies, are there, what federal, backing is there, and I think it's good, my dad was very into solar gain and all that good stuff, but I'm just like,
Sure.
I just don't want it to be a political thing. I want it to just be a beneficial thing.
Absolutely, and I think that was kind of an idea that we had, as we're kind of walking around and talking, like, is there other cool, like, cherry on top solutions we could offer?
Yeah,
That this is something we could add on, it's really not like part of the project, let's say, like, this is cool things that we can continue to discuss if we feel it necessary.
I think the reason why, and right, it's not part of the deal.
Right.
But the reason why it's interesting is because the whole E-RINs is based on wanting to create electric vehicle infrastructure across the country because for the future.
yeah,
And so they're trying to distribute to the vehicle manufacturers so they can invest in electrical infrastructure associated with it. So it seems like it's all tied together.
Yeah.
That's why, but yeah, we're not gonna be putting anyone, that's not.
That's not like part of it, let's initially do, it's just kind of interesting additives that we can consider them.
yeah, and what I did learn from the conference is that they are gonna be it's gonna be part of interstate systems and all that, and it was very interesting, I appreciate your presentation, and I'm excited to see that, you guys have come up with this options. Thank
Great.
you.
Good comment, thank you.
I'm excited that we're getting off the dime. So, anyway, if there's no other questions or whatever, thanks for your
Thank you so much.
time and effort, whatever, and hopefully we can cut a deal at some point in time.
Thank you all.
Adam, Aaron, thanks for chiming in, guys.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank
Have a
you.
good breakfast, Adam.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah.
Well, I'll bounce and let you guys have a continuing turn discussion, but thank you guys seriously.
Okay, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool to be a local guy and see this kind of things come to light, so thank you very much.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Good.
Thanks,
Uh,
Brett.
Nice meeting you. Thank you, thanks, everybody.
Go Ghosts.
There you go, go.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, everybody.
You bet.
Okay. Landfill gas systems proposal upgrades.
Yeah, so we had included in our 23 budget, roughly $1 million to upgrade equipment at our Sunnyview compressor and flare. The flare and compressor systems are way oversized, so we're wasting a lot of electricity with the small amount of gas that we're using now. We're also essentially limping the system along. And if there's any kind of failure in any of the technology, that just shuts the pipeline down, shuts off power generation. So what we wanted to consider sooner rather than later is getting a smaller compressor system installed that we could continue to do these beneficial use projects along with a smaller flare system for when we do have to do maintenance on the gas energy equipment and flare the gas for a period of time. So we put together proposals for vendors. Well, 2 different proposals were put out on the street. We had a virtual pre-proposal meeting, which a number of vendors attended. Walked through the specs on the project, and then we received proposals back on September 1st. So I guess we've had a chance to digest them a little bit, review each of the company's proposals, and I guess Chris has got a presentation here to kind of walk us through the numbers and pluses, minuses, and have a little bit more discussion about what we want to do moving forward. I guess it is listed as an action item, but if the board does not feel comfortable with the dollars and cents of what the proposals came in at, we certainly don't have to take any action today and can bring this back at a future meeting to follow up. A lot of this stuff is happening, you know, there's not much time in the schedule, so.
Does this dovetail in with what?
It does. So I guess one of the things that they've talked about, if we were to make some sort of an arrangement with them, is that would include this equipment we're just gonna run through with you now. So the 2 probably have to go hand in hand, but we wanted to put them both out to you now, and
Yeah.
so.
I guess before I get into this, I'll just, that same presentation from November where we reviewed everything, I'm going back and I'm looking on recommendations, continue current electrical generation operations, just like you guys are, so negotiate, trying to get a fair power purchase rate with Wisconsin Public Service, well, you got month to month. And start the design and bidding process for this equipment, which we're doing. So I guess you guys are making progress, we're taking all the steps, it takes a little time. Okay, so we got these proposals in, September 1st, there's 2 different RFPs, one was for the natural gas extraction boiler and flare system, and one was for the natural gas compressor and treatment system. We got responses from 3 vendors for each of these RFPs. We're gonna review the quals and the proposals here and the pricing and give a recommendation.
And I guess this was put into place as a request for proposal, so it's not solely cost-based. You look at the qualifications, the quality of the equipment, the historical experience of the vendor, all factors into the equation. We don't have to pick the lowest of the bunch, so.
We'll just briefly go over each of the 3 proposers. Parnell, it's a biogas company. They submitted, they're qualified, although they did have a missing insurance certificate. I'm sure we could get that, but they didn't provide any detail on their equipment split or any schedule, and they did include a deviation list that had a positive displacement style compressor instead of the centrifugal blowers we want to use, and that one of the main reasons we specified that was because we no longer want to use compressor oil. In that system.
Well, when you say listed deviation, that mean that that's what they're proposing and won't do the blowers or?
Right, instead of, we said you got, if you have any deviations from what we specified.
Okay,
You have to provide a list of what it is, and they said, oh, we're gonna use these style instead.
so it's not an alternative, it's a true, this is what.
Yeah, and so, they also referenced other adders and deducts. But they didn't include anything, so, we've had experience at both with Parnell skids, actually. Put one in, this summer at Brown County East Landfill. And although it's been okay, it definitely hasn't been stellar, and we also had in Whiteside, Illinois, they delivered the wrong flare stack and had to redo it, so. Not necessarily the most impressive, company. They were the lowest price on both of these proposals, but because of their submittal, we did not think they submitted a response proposal. And so you're not recommending that you use Parnell at this time. So moving to the next slide, is Unison Solution. They're definitely qualified, they're out of Iowa. This is kind of like a Cadillac company. Their systems are really good. But they have a long lead time, 40 weeks. They did have a couple of minor deviations that were acceptable. We deducted, removal of the extraction water recirculation line. And there was some confusion on whether it was needed on that system or not, and neither of them have, we don't have a recirc line on that skid anymore, so they added a little deduct for that. And they're also using an air to gas heat exchanger that for their system performance, which is fine. They are the highest price proposal for both SW2 and 3, which is not a surprise. And then Perennial, they're qualified, they have a schedule of submittals in 4 to 8 weeks and delivery in 28 to 38 weeks. They did have a couple of minor but acceptable deviation. Their glycol chiller has some different features, but they're fine. They don't have that recirc line, and they're using a higher interstage pressure to help their system. We've had good experience with Perennial. In fact, the snow, road blower, and flare system you guys have is a Perennial system, and I know Clint likes it.
Yes.
And they're the median price proposal for both of these, so they're in the middle. So I guess next slide, this is the extracted blower tally sheet from the purchasing department. And if you look at the lump sum on the left, you can see the pricing. And then why don't you just go to the next one? This is for the compression blower treatment. Now it's kind of across the top, it's, and you see the range of prices. So 640 to 850 with Perennial at 717. So I guess go to the next slide and this kind of just gives a summary and bigger, clearer numbers. You can see the extraction flare system. I did a few deducts for the Unison price because they had a control panel, one control panel for the 2 skids and a recirc reduction. But it's pretty clear that they're higher priced, and so in each scenario, this I wanted to to say that, so we're looking at about 1.1 million total for the perennial skid. That exceeds the budget that we had for the systems. But,
And,
yeah,
and it doesn't even include, this doesn't include the installation of this equipment.
Right.
So there was a third, RFP that we were gonna have to put out on the street to essentially tear out the old equipment, install these new skids, get it all, wired up and all the controls working. So that's gonna be above and beyond whatever option we end up choosing here.
So they don't install their own equipment?
these are like manufactured skids, that come delivered prefabricated.
Is that common?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what we ended up having to do when we upgraded the flare here back in 2007. We put in larger compressors, we put in a flare skid, lower skid. Yeah, and we had to hire a company to kind of manage the installation.
Can I ask a couple, just, do you mind? Okay, so Parnell, what was the issues that, first question is, you wouldn't wanna work with Parnell at all? Is that, I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, I guess when we saw the numbers, we have familiarity with perennials equipment and we're real happy with their equipment. The approval process was a little clunky with Parnell. In fact, their proposals came in a day early, but without qual statements, so they were really close to being thrown out right from the get-go, but we let them have a chance to prove that they submitted qual statements, yada, 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 we allowed their proposal to be open. But what their proposal submittals were like compared to the two others, it's like night and day.
Yeah,
And there was there's
they
really
didn't
no
include
detail.
any information. They said,
Here's
here's the
our
price.
price.
And then they said, but, oh, and we wanna use, these are the deviations, but they didn't include, like everyone else includes, okay, here's our proposal with a list of all the equipment. What the materials made of, what all the details, and we went through and say, oh yeah, this matches what our specs are, they didn't include that.
So,
Yep, okay, thank you.
so that kind of gives you a little bit of concern. Spending $1 million with the company. So,
As we're looking at, as we're gonna go through all this RFPs and whatever. I keep thinking back to the previous
Yeah.
proposal.
mhm.
Do they have any concerns about who we do business with or prices or whatever, or are they just saying it doesn't matter to them? Do what you wanna do?
They saying yes. We trust, you guys know what you're doing. They actually, in some of the other. Vespine has approached, me and said basically, hey, could you help us on this other project? Because they don't have necessarily all the expertise to do this.
And through this process, this has to be done anyway.
Here's what I'll say.
That don't sound good.
You don't have to do this, unless if you, but you have to if you want to continue to do landfill gas.
That's pretty big if.
Well, what I'm saying is like, if you shut everything down now and turn down the flare, you wouldn't have to do this.
Not now,
But,
but at some point.
yeah,
If
I guess
decide
that's kind of it's somewhat of a misunderstanding, I guess. I thought this was a process that we had to go through. Or we have to go through this, we want to continue what we're doing.
yes.
We do. Yes, we have to
That's
do
what I-
that if we're gonna continue to generate electricity, whether we sell it to the grid or come up with an arrangement with another vendor.
Is it more important to us to go with a vendor what was the time difference? 38 to 40 weeks?
Perennial has the best, schedule provided. Parnell didn't provide one.
It's only a couple weeks though.
So it's 28 to 38 versus 40.
Yeah, well, I'll take the top end of two-week difference or whatever. Okay.
Yeah, so in any event, the equipment has long lead times,
Yeah, it's
like everything these days, so.
Yeah, so I guess I have recommendation slide, which here, it kind of answers some of maybe your questions. So our recommendation is award these contracts to Perennial Energy. 394,000 for the floor flare and 717 for the compressor treatment. But this assumes that you're gonna continue the landfill gas energy operation, because the equipment must be replaced in order to continue to operate. And it will save significant annual operating costs. Like $30,000 a year or something.
What is, explain that.
Right now, your oversized compressors, have to have a minimum flow in order to operate. In order to have that minimum flow, they have to send gas and recirculate gas in a circle, right? Like half of the, of the overall flow, like 1,000. So you're spending, electricity.
We're
So it's
spending about,
$30,000 of less revenue as opposed to $30,000 of cost. Where does the what's the cost?
Electricity to spin it in a.
Oh, the
circle.
electricity
yeah,
itself.
right now we're
is spent-
spending
okay.
about $60,000 to $70,000 to run the compressors.
Gotcha.
And, they're 250 horsepower compressors, and what we're looking
Oh.
at is 50 horsepower compressors, so. The energy use
Okay.
will be
Okay,
way less with
Cut in
this
half.
new system.
so are we, is that energy being used from what we're generating? No, because it's not a direct, you can't use it directly, that goes to the grid and we buy it back, is that the way it works?
That's right.
Yep. Yeah, we get a separate bill from WPS for.
Just
And that,
put up a conduit between the two. Come on, you guys.
it's 60 to 70, I'm hoping that's a yearly. expense.
Yeah, that's an annual expense,
Yeah.
yeah. So.
So I guess my recommendation would be to partner with Vespine to help fund this investment, because that makes sense to me, and then continue to maximize landfill gas quality and volume, like the team is doing with, Mitchell and,
Yeah, some of the repairs that we've done on site over the last year have, kind of identified some problem areas and kind of tightened things up, so we're able to maintain a more stable, high methane content, low oxygen content, gas flow to the system, so.
Yeah, and, because of the long lead time on this stuff, if you wanna do it, we probably should take action, because if we have to go through another summer with the glycol chiller, the way that it is operating right now, that would be tough. So,
Yeah, we were able to limp the old system through this summer, the summer heat, without major issues, because the glycol chiller, if that goes down, then everything's down, then you're flaring the gas, so.
Well, we don't need to commingle a commitment, for Vespine money in order to make a decision to continue operations.
Right.
I mean, this
Right.
particular,
Right.
action would just be to choose one of those three, so we stay in business. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, you're correct.
the other question, I see you do recommend we choose this being options. And my question would be, what kind of due diligence do we need to do to, verify or be comfortable with Vespine? We have been, my service on the board has been sufficiently long. Of course, there were people here before me.
Don't blame them.
They blame, Yeah, many people here, way before me. And, we've been through a provider that established, a steam, usage out of Neenah. That we had some subsequent difficulties with, but we ultimately triumphed.
That's well put, Paul.
So my question is, you know, what kind of, due diligence do we need to go forward with? Because I do want to stay in business. I recommend, or I am comfortable with, Chris's evaluation. I'd like to go forward. I think, the best P opportunity is visionary. They are at the, forefront of their, pursuit. Probably won't be long till we get an IPO, but nonetheless, you know, maybe we should divide this thought into sections. One would be maybe to go ahead and approve a recommendation for continuing in business, choose one of the three, and then pursue a discussion with what we'll do to be comfortable with this being as a partner.
Yeah, like I said, they're separate issues, but they do have a kind of a combination of things. Maybe you have wait your turn.
So I bring a very unique, you know, perspective, which is ill-advised, uneducated, lack of experience. However,
We all need one of those.
I do think I go with my gut. No, so that's just my, yeah. Well, anyway, I did do a search on Marathon County. Because I've been at the conference 2 years, and I happen to really connect with marathon supervisors.
Okay,
And that makes me feel good.
okay, good.
I feel like that board is going in the right direction.
Mhm.
Again, that is not the reason, I'm just saying, that is something that I did, you know, because there's some trusted individuals that I could call up at any time, and I don't know how the votes were, I don't know, but, you know.
Well, I think at Marathon County, what they did was they negotiated with a company called Verity.
Okay,
And they are a larger, and also an energy developer, but they are focused on renewable natural gas. Because Marathon County is still active landfill, and they are eventually putting that in.
Right,
But
but Marathon County ran gas to energy like we did,
exactly, you know,
with Caterpillar engines, until their power purchase agreement went from here to here, and they couldn't make it work anymore, so they shut it down and have been flaring again.
they have been flaring gas, and then Brady said, you know what, we can't put our system in for years because it takes so long to get it up and everything. So in the meantime, let's have this bridge with Vespine and Dave Hagenbusher, who's the director there, I don't even, but yeah, it's great, you know, they just came in and put it in. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot, it's a very similar situation to Winnebago's.
Do we know if have they got those engines?
No, they haven't gotten.
So when we went to visit the site and see this data center, the 3 engines that they eventually plan to refurbish, run on landfill gas, and then run the data center on the renewable gas or renewable energy from that system. The engines were all torn apart. They're all being rebuilt. So they've actually started up their data center on grid power and are telling us that it's still profitable to them on grid power. And eventually they're gonna convert it to renewable energy from landfill gas. But that certainly appeared to be a fair amount of time out based on the condition of the roads.
Now, are we getting the cart before the horse in order to, if we went with Vaspine, they would pay the 1.1 million to put in the flare and the compressor, is that?
Yeah,
And if we go ahead and do the flare and compressor first, does that mean they don't reimburse us or?
no, I think either way they would, as long as we can agree to a contract. So these, you know, we just didn't wanna delay this any longer just because of the lead times on this.
Yeah.
I mean, I wish we could be further along with the negotiations with Vaspine.
So what's your hope today? I guess this is a lot to digest
Yeah.
and vote on all in an hour and a
My
half.
suggestion was, you need to approve this process that we've been working on for quite some time now and whatever, and if it happens to work out for that Despine or whatever those people are, and I think they're very aggressive right now in their
So
process.
part of
They
the
wanna
contract-
get their name out there and whatever and stuff, so we have to, I think, further, like, how is it, we gotta further evaluate the finances of that thing. And I think that's pretty easy to prepare and whatever, I don't think that's gonna be an issue, but this is the issue because of the lead time. And all, and I think you just move forward with this, cause it's,
In the contract, we try to
yeah, I don't think that's an issue.
reimburse us for what we've just stuck in to
I
make
heard
it work.
there was $1.5 million thrown around, but that's always cheap. Lip service is cheap, but yeah, I think that we're in a better bargaining position. I think if we buy this and proceed with this and we're on, but Mike first.
Well, I had a couple of questions, I was gonna make a motion, but the first question is, where are we at, how's the current budget?
The budget was, $1 million, so we'd have to, if we're gonna award something to Perennial, we would have to then amend the budget amount.
Okay, secondly, did I understand we're using Perennial on, is there some operational efficiency for the mechanics to have the same type of equipment? We should probably make sure that's on record somewhere.
We tried to actually get the blowers to match, to be the same, but Perennial said they couldn't be exactly the same, but they are the same manufacturer.
Yeah, but it's certainly better than the other two companies, which would be completely, almost
Right.
completely different. Okay, thirdly, this is just my desire back to the Vespine thing. Calling that thing a data center makes me uncomfortable. And publicly, it makes me uncomfortable because there's a sense that that's a data center, that's the cloud. I don't know why they use that term, because it's not a data center at all, as far as I can tell.
Well,
And I don't want there to be some sense that we're running a data center, because with that, theoretically, would create a bunch of liabilities and securities and all of that stuff that we're not doing. So I don't know what we want to call it, but I'd rather call it something else.
yeah, they call it they're trying to be broad with that, because really it's just computers, and they may sell the use of those computers for different things. The ones in Marathon are Bitcoin miners.
Okay.
And that's what they were here too.
That's what their website.
And Bitcoin, and so Bitcoin miners, what they're doing is they're doing ledger calculations to earn Bitcoin. And
Computer box.
Yeah, well, whatever. I'm just saying it makes me a little, it seems like the wrong vernacular.
well,
for
should
that.
you use, should we say the Bitcoin miners? I mean, because they're sensitive about that.
Yeah, no.
Some people are like, oh.
I don't, again, maybe I'm nitpicking here. I just, every time I hear that term,
That
it seems,
sounds too nitpicky.
it seems.
Paul's,
Thank you, Chairman.
Paul's up next.
Well, I wanna hear him make his motion,
Okay,
and, it may avoid my need to talk.
okay. I guess I am gonna make a motion.
Make the motion.
I'm gonna make a motion approve the purchase of, or award the contracts SW02, SW03 to Perennial Energy, for the cost listed. That's my motion.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded, under discussion. Hearing no discussion, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is carried.
There we go. Onward and upward. So I guess I just have unrelated or somewhat related, but before we agree to a 10-year, multi-million-dollar contract, should there be like a request for proposals? I understand they may be the only ones out there doing this, but should we at least, like Paul said, do our due diligence, or somebody said, I forgot who. Should we do our due diligence and say, here it is, and that way, when they're the only ones who bid, we, as a board, we can say, yeah, we threw it out there.
I guess we were starting to go down that road with, a company called Eco Engineers. But as soon as that ruling of E-RINs came out that they weren't gonna be included with the EPA's RFS rules, then we kind of paused that and focused more on what Vespine had put in front of us.
Well, right, because BTR was also another company that we've been talking to, and BTR actually is now, when I talked to them, they're saying you should go with Vespine. So they had a relationship. So basically, I mean, we could do that, and we talked about doing that process, but I think we know what the results would be. And I get it, because that might be a decision for you guys to make.
Right.
Oh,
Well, are we acting in the, or considering in the sense that, Chris has, searched the, competition or the, other hospital companies that do business like the team desire to go forward with? Or do we charge him with, trying to take the time to research this to find out if there is anybody else that we could,
Yeah, Richard,
learn
I was gonna
about?
say Eco Engineers, whether.
You know, I mean, I don't.
yeah, I'm thinking that Chris and John could certainly do some background and do whatever it takes in order, Chris is on our payroll. So he's.
Well, that's what
somewhat-
I'm saying that, if we're, like, Kevin says, if we're going to look out there and see if there is some other alternative, to Vespine, you know, we should at least be aware of it. I think that Chris had mentioned, a company, that he had, spoken with that said, do business with
Yeah,
us.
BTR, yeah.
They were not prepared to, you know, to pursue what Vespine has presented.
Right. Well, I think we can certainly regroup a little bit and talk to unfortunately, our legal, outside legal counsel, Richard Heineman from Boardman Law, that's been helping us with the WPS agreement. He had another conflict this morning, but wants to hear about how the discussions went. He's been provided with the details of what Vespine proposed. And whether or not it makes sense to engage Eco Engineers again, maybe get some feedback from them on what Vespine has proposed and what else is out there. All I know is the other option that we had on the table, like in a written form, was not nearly as lucrative as what this appears to be on the surface. So, I mean, it was a company that was interested in buying our reps. So, which is the environmental part of our power production.
Jenna?
Just a real quick question, so question for Kevin, are you looking, I like the idea of having that, the due diligence and just the paper trail and that we, you know, cause people wonder about, well, did you just, and it looks like you've developed, you had things that came up, but then they just dissipated because, so I don't know if like the paperwork could be, if that would, are you looking for actual bids or Kevin, or?
I guess I'm looking for more as a thought off to the board. My thought is, we craft what we're looking for. If it's your family, you wanna buy a car, you're gonna say, I want an SUV, I want it to be 4-wheel drive. And now I'm gonna look at Honda, Toyota, Ford. And I guess that's kind of what I'm saying. If this is what we're looking to do, throw it out there, get RFPs from whoever wants to bid. And if there's only one, then that's great, then we know who we're gonna go with. But if we get 3, maybe there's an outlier or somebody who started business last month rather than 3 years ago. I don't know, and I think Chris has done a lot of good work here. It's nothing against
No,
anything you're doing.
no, I understand. No, there's public process that
Yeah,
you wanna make sure you're hitting, but sometimes you have situations, right, where there's only one, it's like a unique.
Yep.
One entity that can provide what you want. And so, we can create whatever process you want, but I don't wanna waste time or money either. So, maybe if you have, like eco engineers, so I know they are heavy into the same, market, they're landfill gas. And they know all of the players. They're not necessarily an energy company themselves, they're more of a energy consultant.
Right.
And so we could have them do some due diligence maybe and say, hey, because I also know that they have a slightly more conservative take on the E-RINs than Vespi. They're like, I don't know, Vespi's like, it's coming. And so, you get different thoughts about what's gonna happen. But they could also review the contract for you and say, hey, are we missing anything? Is this what you see? And they give feedback on that too. Paul,
I'm sorry.
How much time do we need to make a decision and to gather the necessary information? I know that, next month we're getting into the, actual budget for October 31st. From what the, county executive said last night, he's still between a rock and a hard place, in terms of, coming up with, the executive's interpretation of what the departments ought to have. So that, we still may have an issue, to discuss, on, the budget at our next meeting. But, will we be able to get enough, information, to, go forward? I think that we've all kind of digested the concept that was presented. We realize that this is a startup operation. We realize that we're going to take a risk, but then again, on the terms that were presented to us, it's kind of a minimum risk. We made a decision to stay in business. The next decision we need to make is, do we go forward with this? Just like 20 years ago, Mr. Conrad and Mr. Eska went forward with, the energy contract, that took us to, WPS for 25 years.
I would like to think that, I guess I'm hopeful to hear feedback on the full. Our solid waste board full budget from changes that the executive is going to recommend. Within the next week or so. They wanted, I guess they wanted departments to wait until after. The executive had kind of made his final decisions for the departments before briefing the board, but I would like to think that the first meeting in October, we could have an update on that aspect. And then give us more time to do this due diligence consultation with eco engineers. On the best being option and maybe circle back the second meeting. So that gives us a month, and that would keep you out of budget deliberations would come into play that first week in November. So that would be the meeting, normal meeting of solid waste board that might not be able to happen because supervisors are gonna be negotiating and deliberating that 2024 budget.
Right, if we have to, we can have a special meeting just for this issue.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
Yep.
it's like. And
So-
so just dovetail it with,
right.
you know, the opportunity that you guys have, but.
Yeah, you don't really want to delay it any more than necessary, but obviously we want to go back and look at details and make sure we, check boxes and make the board comfortable with, the ultimate decision of how we want to move forward with.
Right, and you know for a fact, just talking to the executive, how he likes to. Keep his thumb on the pulse.
Yep.
And whatever, so he's gotta be part of this process and whatever, so.
Yep.
So he, nice if he would, like, if we're gonna, the
Yeah,
next
next
dialogue
time.
that he's here to
Yeah,
listen
be
to
part of it.
whatever we have to talk about.
Okay. Does that sound all right? From a schedule and marching order standpoint? Okay. All right,
Next thing up,
with my little list.
oh my God.
Hey, we're still running gas and energy. We actually, with the repairs that were made, we actually made some repairs. Additional repairs in August with landfill drilling and piping, sealed up a couple other questionable areas of the site, and they were able to get that work done on a nice little T&M contract, kind of like tag along from the work they did last fall. They were on site for a better part of a week, and the final cost was $20,186 for the work that they did, that we're really happy with. And that has allowed us to continue to allow us to run 500 plus CFM, less than 0.5% oxygen, 52 or greater methane, which provides real stable fuel for the engine. And once we did some repairs in August with some decoking work on engine 3 and engine 2R, now in September, we're running all 3 engines during the day and then shutting one off at the end of the shift, allowing the site to recover overnight, same on the weekends, to not overdraw the well field. So there's been quite a few weeks here in September where we've been running 3 engines for the majority of the day. So we should bounce back with some pretty good revenues in September. But the last 2 months, July was pretty decent at the engine 2R and 3R site. We were able to run engine 4 enough to minimize the electrical expense at that location. So 65,088, and engine 4 was down with a deco operation for the majority of the month. And then in August, with, like I mentioned, the 2 deco operations, we're at 20,620 from engine 2R and 3, and then 19,205 from engine 4, so we're at 39,825. For through 9 months, that puts us at 492,896, so we've already exceeded our budget estimate, and I've added a new column three new columns here to this table, which shows the rates. And as you can see, there's been two different changes. Started out beginning of the year with a blended rate of about 7.2 cents on and off peak. Then in April and May, it dropped down to 5.9 cents. And then June, July, August, it's back up a little bit to 6.2 cents. So again, this floating rate, and I guess we've never operated under an agreement like this where, they just change it to whatever they like to change it to, but we're still making do. So let's see, just a couple other things to mention. Jim, you had asked about the EPA Swiffer grant for the Tri-County Recycling Facility. Unfortunately, we got word recently that we weren't one of the proposals that were selected for our grant for that equipment. Outagamie County is going to be requesting a debrief meeting to understand, I guess, the reasons behind why our proposal for adding robotics to our system was not selected, but at least we've kind of closed the loop on that one. We're still planning to move forward with robotics in the equipment upgrades, and they've already started picking up discussions with the vendor on that. And we're gonna be funding that out of our equipment replacement fund that we continue to build up for as the system dates itself. Kathy had mentioned to me that one of our competitors now, GFL, who ended up buying the waste management acquisition of Advanced Disposal, this GFL, this lime green company that you see trucks and dumpsters, came into play, and they acquired a lot of the landfills and collection systems in our area. They have a landfill in Chilton, and they also have a landfill down in Horicon. And what Kathy and the Tri-County group has heard through the grapevine is GFL is building a recycling facility down in Horicon. So there is going to be some material that's been coming into our system voluntarily. I mean, more of the Tri-County system that may end up, once that facility becomes operational, that it will migrate south to their own facility. But that's about the extent of the details. I saw somebody had acquired a recent Google Maps pic where you could actually see the construction progressing from a bird's eye view. And then one other thing I wanted to mention is Canarola Conservation Park. Finally able to connect with the Parks Director and regarding weed treatment of the pond. And I reached out to the vendor again, said, hey, really like to try to get this done this fall. Can you provide a quote? We contacted the Parks Department directly and talked through some options, submitted a quote, 3 options, 1 recommended. And I just said, Adam, just coordinate getting that treatment done. It's going to be about $1,800. And then once the work is done, just have them send the invoice to the solid waste and we'll pay it. And just be there. Then we've taken care of that aspect of it. The selected option was I guess the least concerning from an environmental standpoint, and it actually will last the longest. It takes a little longer to, I guess, activate, but it seemed like the best option for the pond, and it's an option that Parks has used in county park ponds and has had good success with it. So,
Great. Thanks for that.
yeah.
It's like the weeds have grown
Yeah.
like 700
Yeah.
feet.
Yeah. So, and like I mentioned, I think I mentioned to you that I know in the parks budget, I'm not sure where this stands, but they were looking to add a position of a parks caretaker. With part of the responsibility of that position would be to provide additional maintenance at Canarola Park. And there would be a associated cost allocation of around $5,000. And so that is something that I was comfortable with. I know Pat was comfortable with. Just to kind of let's get past how this park is gonna be maintained. So I'm not sure where that's gonna sit, in the exec's budget, but at least Adam and I talked, and that's what he was gonna propose, the executive demo, so. Because we wanna take care of it, we don't want it to go into disarray, so.
And all of the department heads serve at the, executive's will.
Correct. That is all I had.
Motion to adjourn.
Hang on, wait. Hang on, we got future agenda items, right?
Yeah.
Speaking of Kenneral Park, I'd actually like to, maybe we can have an annual something. I wouldn't mind having the park director, somebody here, I'd kind of like to have the board continue to be made aware of usage, how many people are going there, what's it being used for? And I don't know if that
Yeah.
should come from you or him, maybe, I think I would like to have a once a year agenda item and an update on the activities and usage of Kenneral
Yeah,
Park.
okay. Yeah, I can certainly arrange for Adam and whoever he, I know his right-hand man retired this summer, so. Tom McGinnis, that was one that was coming to the board and giving us some updates on the maintenance activities and whatnot, but,
Thank you.
you can do that.
Not gonna invite supervisor vendor.
It's a free. The meeting, I guess, you can come if you want.
Yeah. So.
Okay, motion adjourned. Future. Go ahead. Oh, future. Well,
I have something.
okay.
I can't talk about it because it's not on the agenda. Have we ever had, looked at the wisdom of having a solar farm here? I'm thinking that we have all this south facing hillsides over here, put a solar farm in, is there any wisdom to that, to making, I would like to see this become solid waste and power generation.
Yeah, I think,
Especially with the Vespine coming into it,
Right.
play here too.
yeah, I guess,
And we don't have to discuss it right now, but can we add it?
yeah,
We can roll right up into the dialogue.
Sure.
Right.
It will attach the panels to the data center.
Exactly, yeah. Get more pennies for us.
yeah.
Exactly, so, okay, now I need a motion to adjourn.
When's our next?
Next meeting is what?
October 4th.
October 4th.
That withdraws it.
Yeah, now I'm afraid to make the votes. I got yelled at twice.
Steve.
Yes. All right, there's been a motion made, was it seconded? I didn't hear.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion made and seconded to adjourn, all in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Thanks, Chris.
Hold on. Leave it alone. Leave it alone.